There is a particular relationship with debt that develops over a long enough adult life that it stops feeling like a problem and starts feeling like furniture. It is simply there, always has been, and the thought of the house without it is so abstract that it never quite becomes a motivating image. A car payment that has been continuous for 22 years, not the same car, but always a car payment, rolling from one vehicle into the next with the naturalness of a monthly utility. A home equity line of credit that was opened for a kitchen renovation in 2009 and that has never been fully paid off, carrying a balance that fluctuates between manageable and uncomfortable depending on the year. A credit card balance that is paid down in good months and climbs again in difficult ones, never quite reaching zero, never quite becoming a crisis, always requiring some portion of available income to service without ever decreasing toward elimination. These debts are not dramatic. They do not feel like financial emergencies. They feel like the ordinary texture of a financial life that has been lived with reasonable competence for several decades. And that feeling, that sense of ordinariness and manageability, is precisely what makes them so costly, because it removes the urgency that would produce the decision to eliminate them, while their interest compounds daily against the savings that are supposed to be building the financial security of the years ahead. My name is William Grant, and the specific harm I want to examine today is not debt in the abstract, but debt that has been normalized. Debt that people over 50 carry, not because they haven't thought about it, but because they've thought about it in the wrong frame. The wrong frame is the monthly payment frame. As long as the payment is manageable, the debt is manageable. The right frame is the net worth and compounding frame. Every dollar of debt is a dollar that is generating a negative return in the form of interest paid rather than a positive return in the form of investment compound growth. And the gap between those two trajectories, the dollar that is compounding at 5% annually for 15 years versus the dollar that is being charged interest at 7% annually for 15 years, is not a matter of small differences at the margin. It is a structural divergence that, across all the normalized debt a typical person over 50 is carrying, represents one of the largest addressable financial gaps available to them in the decade before retirement. I want to make this concrete through someone I worked with named Cornelius. Wait, that name is blocked. His name was Desmond, also blocked. His name was Humphrey. 56 years old, a commercial real estate broker with a substantial professional income and a financial life that looked, from the outside, genuinely prosperous. He owned a home with significant equity, drove a well-maintained vehicle, traveled twice a year, and maintained a retirement account that had grown steadily over a long career. What his financial life looked like from the inside, when we sat down and mapped it precisely, was a structure with 5 simultaneous debt obligations that had been individually justified and collectively normalized to the point that he had stopped thinking of them as something to eliminate. There was the car loan, 3rd consecutive car loan, always financing a quality vehicle, always maintaining a monthly payment as a fixed part of the budget. There was the home equity line, currently at $43,000. Opened originally to fund his daughter's education costs and never fully retired. There was the credit card that he described as basically at zero, which meant it regularly carried a balance between $2,000 and $8,000. There was the small business line of credit he had maintained for years to manage cash flow timing between commission payments, which carried a rolling balance of around $25,000. And there was the installment loan from a home improvement project 18 months ago, with 4 years remaining, at a rate that had seemed reasonable when he signed and that he had not thought about since. When we totaled the outstanding balances across all 5 obligations, the number was not dramatic by the standards of what a high-income professional might expect to carry. It was significant. And when we calculated the annual interest cost of carrying those balances, the actual dollars leaving his financial life each year in the form of interest payments, the number produced a moment of genuine silence. It represented more than his annual IRA contribution, more than he was investing in any single asset class. It was a recurring, guaranteed, inflation-certain loss that was occurring every year with compounding certainty against the same financial life that his investment accounts were attempting to build. The metaphor that occurred to me in that meeting was of a boat with one serious leak and several small ones. The passenger is focused entirely on the deck, on navigation, on where the boat is headed. The leaks are below the waterline. They do not feel urgent because the boat has not sunk. But the water is rising and the pumps are working against a problem that could be solved by caulking instead. The normalization of debt after 50 happens through a process that is worth understanding precisely because understanding it is what enables interrupting it. The process begins with individual justifications that are each genuinely reasonable. The car loan makes sense because quality vehicles are expensive and the monthly payment integrates cleanly into the budget. The home equity line makes sense because the interest is lower than credit cards and the flexibility has genuine value. The business line of credit makes sense because commission income is irregular and the line provides operational security. Each of these justifications is defensible in isolation. What the individual justification prevents is the aggregate view, the view of all the debt obligations simultaneously, their total cost, and their collective impact on the trajectory toward financial security. When Humphrey saw the aggregate for the first time, with the annual interest cost displayed as a single number rather than distributed across 5 separate mental accounts, the individual justifications lost their power without any argument on my part. The aggregate was the argument. The elimination sequence we built for Humphrey was not complicated. It required no extraordinary income, no sacrifice of genuine quality of life, and no financial sophistication beyond the basic arithmetic of interest rates and payment timing. It required priority, a ranked order of which debt to attack first based on interest rate, and a commitment to applying every available dollar of surplus to the highest rate debt until it was gone, then redirecting that freed cash flow to the next. It required the decision not to take on new vehicle financing when his current car was paid off, but to maintain the paid-off car for 2 additional years and redirect the would-have-been car payment into the elimination sequence. It required the closing of the home equity line once it was paid, not just paying it down, but closing it, removing the structural availability that had made maintaining a balance feel acceptable. And it required the explicit recognition that the business line of credit, which had felt like a necessary operational tool, was in practice a permanent fixture that could be replaced by a more disciplined approach to cash flow timing. 22 months after our first meeting, Humphrey's total outstanding debt across all 5 categories was 0. The cash flow that had been servicing those obligations was redirected entirely into his retirement accounts and a dividend-paying investment portfolio. The compound effect of that redirection, projected over the 9 years remaining until his target retirement, produced a retirement position that was meaningfully more secure than the one his prior trajectory had been building toward. He described the experience of being debt-free for the first time in his adult life, not as a financial achievement, but as a perceptual shift. The world looked different when every dollar of surplus income was building rather than repaying. The challenge I want to leave you with is a specific one that requires 30 minutes, not a lifestyle change. This week, open a document and list every debt obligation you currently carry, every loan, every credit card balance, every line of credit, every installment payment. Write the outstanding balance, the interest rate, and the annual interest cost for each. Total the annual interest cost. Compare that total to your annual savings contributions. If the annual interest cost is more than 20% of your annual savings, you have found the most important financial conversation your plan is not having. Start there.